Have you ever wondered why Europe, once a united continent, found itself divided into East and West after World War II? The answer lies not in a single battle or treaty, but in a long, tense ideological conflict known as the Cold War. This division wasn't caused by borders alone. It was shaped by fear, power struggles, and two opposing worldviews fighting for dominance without firing a single direct shot at each other. After the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945, Europe lay in ruins. Cities were bombed, millions were displaced, and the world was desperate for stability. The United States and the Soviet Union, allies during the war, emerged as the two superpowers. But their alliance was only temporary, built on the common goal of defeating Hitler. Once the war ended, their deep political and economic differences came to the surface. The US promoted capitalism, free markets, and democracy. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, pushed for communism, state control, and a one-party rule. These two ideologies were incompatible, and the result was a battle not fought with guns, but with influence and fear, a Cold War. Germany became the first major flashpoint. The country was divided into four zones controlled by the US, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Berlin, the capital, was also split despite lying deep in Soviet-controlled East Germany. Soon, tensions grew. In 1948, the Soviets attempted to block all access to West Berlin, leading to the Berlin Airlift, where Western powers flew in supplies for nearly a year. This event made it clear, Europe was splitting, and it wasn't going back. By the early 1950s, two separate blocs had formed. In the West, countries aligned with the US through the NATO alliance. In the East, the Soviet Union created its own military pact called the Warsaw Pact. What physically and symbolically cemented this division was the Iron Curtain, a term made famous by Winston Churchill. This wasn't a real wall at first, but rather a heavily guarded border that stretched across Europe, separating communist East from capitalist West. But the most iconic symbol of this divide came in 1961, the Berlin Wall. Built by the East German government, it was designed to stop the massive flow of people fleeing from East Berlin to the West. For 28 years, it stood as a physical reminder of the Cold War, splitting families, friends, and a nation in two. It wasn't just a wall of bricks and barbed wire, it was a wall of ideology. Life on both sides of the divide was drastically different. In the West, countries like France, West Germany, and the UK experienced economic growth and rebuilding, supported by US aid such as the Marshall Plan. In the East, however, economies were centrally controlled, and personal freedoms were heavily restricted. Surveillance, censorship, and secret police became part of daily life for many Eastern Europeans. Still, the Soviet Union maintained control through both military force and political pressure. Over time, resistance grew. People in Eastern Europe began to question the system. Movements in Poland, uprisings in Hungary, and demands for reform in Czechoslovakia showed that the Eastern Bloc wasn't as stable as it seemed. By the 1980s, economic decline and increasing public unrest made it harder for the Soviet Union to maintain its grip. In 1989, a wave of revolutions swept through Eastern Europe. One by one, communist governments fell. And finally, on November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. People from East and West climbed the wall, broke it apart with hammers, and celebrated a freedom many thought they'd never see. It was the beginning of the end for the Cold War, and a new chapter for Europe. So, why was Europe split in two? It was the result of a complex struggle between two world powers trying to shape the post-war world in their image. While it never turned into a direct military confrontation between the US and the Soviet Union, the Cold War left a lasting impact on Europe's politics, economy, and society. Even today, the scars of division, and the lessons of unity, remain deeply embedded in the continent's identity. This is the story of how fear, ideology, and power divided a continent, and how, eventually, the will of the people helped put it back together.